Today's video is brought to you by loremaster.io, a brand new campaign organizer available right now to people who pledge to their Patreon using the link below. With a bunch of unique features like their story canvas, as well as an incredibly beautiful and intuitive UI, you will find everything you need to keep your campaign organized and every note within arm's reach. Check out loremaster.io using the link at the top of the description below the video. Thank you again for sponsoring this video. Orcs in Pathfinder 2e are probably my favorite representation of the ancestry in any system. They still retain their kind of cliched, stereotyped savageness, but they've been expanded to include such a wide repertoire of subcultures within the orc society that orcs can look like this, as we're used to, or an orc can look like that. Hello. So let's dive into the Orc Ancestry, find out what makes them tick from a base level, learn about their feats, and overall just analyze one of the coolest ancestries in Pathfinder 2e. Kind of surprising to me, orcs are uncommon. I guess this is just because it's not in the core rulebook, but yeah, technically you do need GM permission in order to play an orc, but come on GMs, let your players play orcs. They do have some of the highest starting hit points with 10 hit points at level 1 on top of whatever your class gives you, which is amazing. They're medium creatures, 25-foot move speed, but they are one of the few ancestries that don't have an ability flaw. Instead, they have an inherent bonus to strength and then any other ability of your choice. This is awesome and really reflects that versatility within orcs themselves. They always have that sort of genetically stronger muscle mass, but what they're good at is really up to you and what happened to your character during their life. I really like this option. It's typically my favorite. I like the humans, of course, because you can just assign them anywhere, but I like this where it's, yeah, orcs are strong, and then you get to fill in the blank. They, of course, speak Common, Orcish, and then additional languages equal to your intelligence modifier. They have the Orc trait and the Humanoid trait, and all orcs have dark vision, which is just so nice. I know every ancestry and their grandmother has dark vision, but let me tell you, as someone who played a human without dark vision for a whole campaign, it can really hurt and make stealth missions in dark places nigh impossible, so never underestimate dark vision. I should probably explain that it makes stealth missions impossible because you usually need to have like a light cantrip or a lit torch, and then people can see you. Let's start talking about the heritages, starting with the Badlands Orc, which is just an orc with an insanely high endurance. You can hustle twice as long as usual without getting exhausted, and you treat heat environmental effects as one stage less severe than they are. I like this. This is a nice twist on some of the elemental heritages like the Heatforged Dwarf or whatever they're called, where usually you just get environmental protection and damage resistance, but this foregoes the damage resistance to just go with, yeah, these guys are super high stamina, so they can just take the heat. They're not necessarily raised in heat, they're just really good at handling it. So they don't get inherent resistance to damage, they're just good at living in it. The Deep Orc is something I don't see enough of. You always see these, deep elves, deep gnomes, Duergar, stuff like that, but you never hear about a deep orc that lives underground with bright red eyes. Now, they already have dark vision, so they can't get anything there, but they do get terrain expertise for underground terrain and combat climber. I just love the idea of a whole society of deep orcs, like crawling up the walls, like the freaking Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. They do that, right? I haven't watched Lord of the Rings yet, so I'm just kind of assuming, and it seems like the kind of thing they would do. And if the fact that I haven't seen Lord of the Rings really makes you upset and makes your blood boil, you should subscribe to the channel and like the video out of spite. Because did you know that over 50% of the people watching this video aren't even subscribed? So yeah, if you're just hate the fact that I haven't seen that movie, you should like the video. That would hurt me. Probably my stupidest call to action yet. Holdscarred Orc, also known as the one that literally everybody takes because it boosts your starting hit points from 10 to 12 and you get Die Hard for free, which means you die at dying 5 instead of dying 4. Pretty much everyone I've seen play an Orc, especially if they're a martial melee character, take Holdscarred because it's just so good. And Rainfall Orc is pretty cool. You were raised in the rainforest, so you get +2 to athletics checks to climb and swim, and +2 to saving throws against diseases. And if you thought we were done with heritages, you're wrong, because the Lost Omens Ancestry Guide added 3 new Orc heritages, starting with Battle Ready, which makes you trained in intimidation and really good at staring at people until they pee their pants with the Intimidating Glare skill feat. Grave Orc is a really cool heritage in that you and perhaps your entire bloodline were touched by necromantic energies at some point, so you gain resistance equal to half your level against negative damage, even though you are still a living creature, and you get a +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws against any necromancy magic effect. Super cool, super flavorful, just really interesting heritage that you wouldn't typically think about. And the Winter Orc reduces environmental cold effects by 1 step, and you become trained in survival. A little bit less exciting and interesting to me than the Badlands Orc, but still pretty good overall, with a free skill proficiency bump. Now we're done with heritages and can jump into the fun part of Ancestry feats, starting with Beast Tamer. Beast Tamer is an interesting feat that I don't typically find myself taking. You do get the Train Proficiency Nature bump, and you gain the Train Animal skill feat, so you can train yourself, basically a makeshift animal companion. It won't be as strong as like a ranger or a druid's animal companion, but you can teach it basic commands and give it an action by sacrificing one of yours. You're making this really difficult. I don't make the rules anymore, so there's going to be a dog here for a little bit. Now, Iron Fist is one of my favorite level 1 Ancestry feats in the game, because it's a really cool way to allow any character to make use of their fists, as long as they're an orc, of course. Your fists lose the non-lethal trait and gain the shove trait. So now, you can kill people with your fists without taking any kind of penalty, and you gain a bonus to shove checks with your bare hands if you happen to have a bonus to your fists, such as by Hand Wraps of Mighty Blows. Can you behave? Orc Lore. It's a standard Ancestry lore feat. You become trained in Orc Lore along with Athletics and Survival. Tusks. If you would rather bite people than punch them, you can have your tusks be so long and sharp, they're actually a 1d6 piercing weapon. They're of course finesse and unarmed, and they are in the Brawling group. But remember, you can only take this feat at level 1. Though I do love the flavor that you can train out of it if you, like, snap your tusks off or file them down. Orc Ferocity, of course, it's one of the best feats, and it's one that most Orc players will take. As a reaction, once per day, if you would drop to 0 hit points, you instead stay at 1. This is fantastic, you can keep fighting. Now, it is a little bit weaker in Pathfinder 2e. This is because A, you do still gain the wounded condition as though you went down, and B, due to the 3-action economy, it is very likely that they can attack you, drop you to 0, you spend your reaction to stay back at 1 hit point, but then they have 2 more actions that they can hit you with again, dropping you down, and then your Orc Ferocity can't do anything, and all of a sudden you're at dying 2 instead of dying 1. Dying 3 if they somehow crit you. So this is a dangerous feat. It's not as good as people say. It's still good, but it's a lot riskier than people think. Orc Superstition, just an amazing feat. As a reaction, if you are making a saving throw against a magical effect, you use your reaction to get +1. Plain and simple, almost always good. I would say over 50% of saving throws are made against magical spell effects, so this is just incredible, especially if you're a class like Wizard that doesn't get a lot of reactions. This is just a permanent upgrade to saving throws, and God, that's good. Orc Weapon Familiarity. Everyone's always so excited for these ones, you know? You can use weapons with the Orc trait, and it's not good. However, I will say that Orc Weapon Familiarity is on the higher level compared to other Weapon Familiarity feats, if only because a Wizard that is an Orc at level 1 can take this and be trained with a Great Axe for Hand of the Apprentice, leading to my favorite level 1 combo in the game, dealing this much damage. Over in the Ancestry Guide, we have Orc War Mask. Now, try not to get distracted by Orc Daddy over there while I explain this. Orc War Mask is one of the most flavorful Ancestry feats in this game. You actually get to decide the culture of your War Mask's origin. Hey, are you listening? When you pick Orc War Mask, you can pick one of 4 options for the source of your mask's power. The gods for religion, the land for nature, magic for arcana, and the unknown for occultism. You become trained in the associated skill as well as gaining the dubious knowledge skill feat. Additionally, if you ever find 50 gold in your pocket, regardless of your character level, you can spend a day to attune and upgrade your War Mask to gain a +1 item bonus to the associated skill. This is really cool because it's a level 1 feat that can be upgraded at level 1. Now, finding 50 gold at level 1 is incredibly difficult, but it can still be done. At level 5, Orcs can take Athletic Might, meaning whenever they succeed at a swim or climb athletics check, they crit succeed instead. This is a great alternative if you can't get a climb speed or a swim speed. Bloody Blows is incredible, because if you ever critically strike on an unarmed strike that does not have the non-lethal trait, you inflict 1d4 persistent bleed damage. It doesn't matter what the source of this unarmed attack is. Whether it's Iron Fists or Tusks from your Orc Ancestry, or just an unarmed strike from your Monk class, a critical hit now inflicts bleed damage forever. That's amazing. Sure, it doesn't scale up. Even at level 20, this is going to be 1d4, but that's just bonus damage. Meanwhile, Hold Mark is really cool flavor-wise, but really, really bad mechanically. You pick a tattoo to put on your body. This can be an axe, a shield, or a torch, and you gain critical specialization with a very specific weapon depending on the tattoo. If you pick axe, you get crit specialization with axes or picks, not both. If you pick shield, you get hammers or shields, and if you pick torches, you get bombs or knives. This, I guess, is okay if you're a class that doesn't typically get weapon specialization, but for the most part, there's better ancestry feats to take. Like Defy Death, which makes all recovery checks 1 easier, and yes, this stacks with toughness. If you have Defy Death and toughness, your recovery checks are now 8 plus your dying value instead of 10 plus your dying value. That's a whole 10% higher chance to recover. You're also immune to debilitating after effects of things like resurrection. Normally when you're resurrected, you're kind of out of it for a week. No, if you get resurrected, you are ready to go right back into the fray, just like my dog. Mask of Power is a really cool upgrade to Orc War Mask. You can pick 1 spell during your daily preparations out of Fear, Phantom Pain, and True Strike, and you can cast it as a first level innate spell until your next daily preparations. The tradition of this spell is tied to your War Mask's origins, and in my opinion, there is only one right answer here. I mean, maybe you'll take Fear or Phantom Pain if you're a spellcaster already, because you'll have a higher spell DC, but if you're a martial character at all, you're obviously taking True Strike. Not only because it makes your attacks more accurate and more likely to crit, but because the other two will rely on your Charisma spell DC, which you don't really have. Mask of Rejection is a really nice saving throw redo. As a reaction, once per day, if you fail a saving throw against a spell from the same tradition as your War Mask, Divine if you pick the gods, Nature if you pick the lands, you can re-roll it with a +2. Now, the only caveat here is even if you roll a worse result, you do need to stick with it. If your failure becomes a critical failure, you do need to stick with the critical failure. I love redo feats like this, so Mask of Rejection is one of my favorite level 5 options for Orcs. Scar Thick Skin. You don't bleed as easy. Your recovery checks for bleed go from 15 down to 10, and if you get assistance, it goes from 10 down to 5. Really good. Orc Weapon Carnage, you get crit specialization with Orc weapons and great axes, and Victorious Vigor ain't bad. As a reaction, if you drop an enemy to 0 hit points, you gain temp hit points equal to your level. 5 temporary hit points that last for 1 round? Is that worth a level 5 feat? The trigger's a little bit tough to do. It's useless in 1 enemy boss fights, and against a ton of enemies it could be good, but the problem is that it only lasts until the end of your next turn. I think Victorious Vigor would be fine if they lasted for a minute. The fact that they only last 1 round is kinda lame in my opinion. Death's Drums is so cool. If you are suffering from persistent damage or have at least 1 wounded condition, you gain a +2 to all fortitude saving throws. There is not enough of this in Pathfinder 2e. Bonuses to saving throws and things that come from conditions. There is not a lot of negative condition synergy in character options right now. So we want to see more of that, Paizo. Give us more of that synergy with negative effects that give us different positive effects while we have them. Pervasive Superstition is an amazing upgrade to Orc Superstition. You no longer need to use your reaction. You just have a permanent +1 to saving throws against spell effects. That's insanely good. Oh my god. Most Ancestry feats do not give you a permanent upgrade like this. The only downside is that it's a circumstance bonus, so anything that like a bard can give you likely won't... Well, no, that's usually a status bonus. Yeah, no, this is incredible. Holy cow. Undying Ferocity removes a little bit of the risk factor of Orc Ferocity. When you use Orc Ferocity to stay at 1 hit point, you gain temporary hit points equal to your level. Is this going to save your life at level 9, having 10 hit points instead of 1? Probably not. Things are typically going to hit for more than 10 damage, so if you're taking a hit anyway, you're probably still going down, so maybe skip this one? I don't know, use your judgment. What this can save you from, however, is persistent damage. If you are taking 1d6 persistent fire damage and it triggers Orc Ferocity, that could give you an extra turn and thus time for someone to heal you before you go back down. Dragon Grip is pretty cool. You have to have taken Beast Trainer at level 1, but this does give you access to the uncommon Riding Drake Companion. Companion, why is that word hard for me to say? Additionally, you get a +2 to Diplomacy to make an impression on creatures with the Dragon trait, so you can just talk to dragons better than other people because you understand them. I don't know how this fits into Orc lore. Do Orcs have an inherent connection to dragons that I'm not aware of? Let me know in the comments. I don't know lore. Why is Mask of Pain so cool? As a reaction, if you demoralize a creature, you deal 2d6 mental damage on top of making them frightened. If you have legendary proficiency in intimidation, you deal 4d6. Is this a ton of damage? No, but this is adding damage to an action that does not have the attack trait, which is always incredible. Incredible Ferocity is fine, I guess. You can use Orc Ferocity once per hour instead of once per day. This is great in those high number of combat per day campaigns, but if you're like me and you rarely see more than 1 combat per day, this gets way less useful. Orc Weapon Expertise, if you increase proficiency with any other weapon, you also increase proficiency with Orc weapons. This is useless. Ferocious Beasts, if you have an animal companion and Orc Ferocity, your animal companion gains the Orc Ferocity reaction and the effects of Undying Ferocity if you have that feat as well. This is super cool. Your animal companion can now stay at 1 hit point and gain temporary hit points equal to their level when they do so. Fantastic. No complaints here, no notes. This is awesome on an Orc Ranger or an Orc Druid. I have no problem with this. I don't think it's overpowered. I think it's really, really cool. Spell Devourer. If you have Pervasive Superstition, now, when you get affected by a magical spell effect, before taking damage, you gain temporary hit points equal to double the spell's level. Someone shoots a level 5 fireball at you, congrats. On top of your +1 to saving throws, you also get 10 temporary hit points, reducing the effective damage of the fireball by 10. This is so good. I just love this anti-magic orc thing that they've got throughout all these feats. It's so neat, and it's just a fun way to be like spellcasters. You're cute. I need to look into it. Does this all stack with a lot of the Superstition Barbarian stuff? Because they get a bunch of bonuses to attack spellcasters. With all of these feats that give you bonuses to resist spellcasters, that would be awesome. But I feel like the Superstition Barbarian also gets circumstance bonuses to saving throws, which would not stack with Pervasive Superstition. So unfortunately, I feel like this wouldn't go together that well, but I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to do my research. Lifeblood's Call, even more of that negative condition synergy. When attacking with melee attacks, you get a circumstance bonus to damage equal to double the added value of your wounded and doomed condition. If you're doomed 1 and wounded 2, you deal 6 additional damage with every melee attack. Now, level 13, that's not a lot. It's not nothing. On top of weapon specialization and your base damage and your modifier, that's a decent chunk of extra damage, especially if you're like a ranger with flurry multi-attacking for tons of damage. That's really good. But this is incredibly dangerous, because if you are at wounded 3, Sure, you might have die hard, so you die at dying 5, but that still means you only have 2 dying before you're dead for 6 bonus damage. That's a really risky playstyle, and I love it. More of this, Paizo. More risk for reward. Mask of Fear is such a cool vision for a free action. When your turn starts and you have the frightened condition, your War Mask burns away, but you remove your frightened condition completely. So this means you cannot use any of your War Mask bonuses or War Mask feats, but you get rid of the frightened condition. If you're like Frightened 3, taking -3 to everything, this is incredible. Just burn it away, get rid of that -3 for the round, perform your whole turn as normal. Doesn't cost an action, it doesn't even cost a reaction. It's a free action, and it's phenomenal. You can even use this, and this is in the text below the feat, even if you are fleeing or paralyzed in fear, you can still use Mask of Fear. This is spectacular. And unfortunately, between all 3 books, this is the only 17th level Orc feat. All the rest of them cap out at 13th level for some reason. But it's a dang good one. As a free action, if you use Orc Ferocity, you can make a melee strike. This doesn't use your reaction, this doesn't have a multiple attack bonus. If you drop the opponent to 0 hit points with this free attack, that use of Orc Ferocity doesn't put it on cooldown. If you can only use Orc Ferocity once per day, but you use it and get a killing blow, you can use it again. Now be wary, because this does still continue to increase your wounded condition. Even if you chain this 3 times and you never actually go down, you will still be wounded 3 and you'll die at wounded 5, or wounded 4 when you go down. You will be dead. So super cool, an amazing way to get an extra attack. I love the Orc feats. That's all of them, but Orcs have such cool synergy with negative effects. Wounded, dying, doomed, persistent damage. Oh, it's all so cool. It plays so well into their sort of war-hungry instincts, even though that's not who they are as a people. It's how their body reacts to strife and damage, and it's like that adrenaline that kicks in. It's like they have human levels of adrenaline to the moon or whatever. I want to see more of this. I want to see more negative effects that give you positive effects in return. I don't think we see that in any of the classes. I don't remember anything in Barbarian or anything, which I think was where it would fit best. But let me know in the comments if you agree with me. Do you want to see more positive effects that come from having negative effects? Because I think it's such a cool risk versus reward play style. But that is all of the Orc Ancestry in Pathfinder 2e. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons for supporting me in everything I do. And hey, now is an amazing time to join the Known At One's Patreon. I know I say that a lot, but stick with me. As of yesterday, the Known At One's patrons of $10 or more just got access to the very first playtest material for Sinclair's library. They have just been given the cursed archetypes. Yes, these are available for you to playtest, use at your tables, completely for free, in air quotes, as long as you're a $10 or higher Known At One's pledge member. You can get your hands on this content super early, and even more than that, you can help us flesh it out, find some things that don't work, rebalance things that don't work, and be part of that Sinclair's library development experience. So, if you are interested in checking out the cursed archetypes that'll be coming out in Sinclair's library, the Kickstarter, join the Known At One's Patreon today. You will get instant access to it the moment that you pledge. That's all from me, guys. Don't forget to click the link in the description to join the mailing list for Sinclair's Kickstarter, which will be going live in March. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, I punched you in the face. I'm so sorry. Known At Ones.